Gee, it sure is boring being a JPEG floating in a black void. I wonder what I could possibly do to pass the time. I know! I'll check what's going on in cartoon Twitter. The cartoon community is just so positive and understanding. Surely a good time is in store. God has left us. Please let this joke be dated. Okay, I definitely need something to lift my spirits. Maybe there's an upbeat cartoon I can watch to help cheer me up. I wonder what it should be. Wait. Wonder. Wonder! And that's the end of the skit, Kill Me. Wander Over Yonder is an animated series made by the legendary Craig McCracken that ran for 2 seasons from 2013 to 2016. Initially premiering on Disney Channel, the show was moved to Disney XD roughly a third into its first season, because for some reason there was a period where Disney's TV division didn't want animation on their main channel. You know, animation. The thing that Disney's most well known for, but that's neither here nor there. While decently successful for the network standards, Wander Over Yonder never gained the notoriety of McCracken's previous works, and was generally overshadowed by shows such as Gravity Falls and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, which is honestly a shame, because out of all of Craig McCracken's works, Wander Over Yonder was always the one that was nearest and dearest to me. It has to be one of the most fun, upbeat, infectiously positive cartoons out there. It's one of those shows that never fails to put me in a good mood, no matter how many times I rewatch it. While it has gained more of a following in the years since its cancellation, I still don't think that Wander Over Yonder quite gets the praise that it deserves. I'd personally go as far as to call it one of the best shows to ever come out of Disney. What makes this show so special? Well, let's find out as we look into this underappreciated gem of a cartoon. The show follows Wanderer, a funny little alien who, alongside his loyal steed and best friend, Sylvia, travels the galaxy to spread happiness and help those in need, while also, often unintentionally, thwarting the plans of wannabe galactic conqueror, Lord Hater, who's bent on destroying our nomadic hero. It's a pretty simple premise that often plays out like a Looney Tunes cartoon, with Wander being the Bugs Bunny to Lord Hater's Yosemite Sam / Elmer Fudd. Only this show is actually really heartwarming. Like, this show is just two best buddies going out their way to help people in any way they can, and it's always so satisfying to see them overcome these different obstacles, all for the sake of doing the right thing. In Wander's Galaxy, it doesn't matter how difficult the journey to help someone might be. Things will work out in the end if you have determination and a positive attitude. Nearly everyone from an evil minion to a straight-up eldritch horror is more than willing to return the kindness Wander shows to them. Wander Over Yonder has this really good-natured, optimistic feel to it that's always pleasant to watch. Our hero, Wander, is this endless well of optimism who wants to help everyone he sees, and is the very definition of a good boy. Just look at him go. He's such a positive, fun character who's just impossible not to love. This is due in no small part to the vocal performance by the always great Jack McBrayer, who brings a playful, upbeat energy to Wander that just makes him a joy to watch.
Mr. Peepers! Thank you for the invitation to the birthday party! And you thought it was a trap.
Though what really makes Wander interesting is how he responds whenever his never hurts to help mentality is challenged. While the show simply could have had the message of help others and leave it at that, Wander Over Yonder isn't afraid to expand upon and delve into the idea of helping people in different ways. But yeah, it never hurts to help, but it isn't always going to be easy. There are times when Wander's helpful nature becomes an inconvenience to himself and others, and even a few points where he starts to question his own philosophy. The episode The Good Deed has to be one of my favorite instances of this happening. Throughout the episode, every time Wander solves someone's problem, it ends up leading to an even bigger one, culminating in Lord Hater launching a missile at her son. With how all of his good deeds have been backfiring horribly, Wander actually considers just letting it happen, believing that stopping Hater could somehow lead to the entire universe being destroyed. And what conclusion does he come to thanks to his best pal Sylvia? Help anyway, because any universe that will get destroyed by a good deed simply isn't one they'd want to live in. And despite everything, they managed to save the day in the end. Moments like these are what really make this show special. Despite how much of a force of good Wander is, he's not infallible. He can push himself too far. He meddles in things when he shouldn't, and there are times when he doubts himself, and comes close to losing faith in his mission to spread happiness across the galaxy, which makes it all the more satisfying to see Wander's optimism shine through, and these obstacles failing to break him. Sylvia, voiced by April Winchell, is Wander's trusty steed and best friend who journeys alongside him. In contrast to Wander's ceaseless optimism, Sylvia is the more cynical, rational of the duo, often preferring to solve problems with her fists. That said, beneath her gruff exterior, she shares Wander's good heart and would do anything to keep him out of harm's way. Wander and Sylvia are among my favorite examples of best friends in a cartoon. These two personalities just balance each other out perfectly, with Wander preventing the more cynical Sylvia from becoming too pessimistic, and Sylvia keeping the more eccentric Wander grounded. Despite how different they are, there's the sense that Wander and Sylvia truly do understand each other. You can just tell that these two have been friends for years, and would do literally anything for the other. The bond between Wander and Sylvia is just so sweet and genuine. I just love it. And then we have the real star of the show, the Duke of Destruction, the Monarch of Mayhem, the one, the only, Lord Hater! Wow, that's the most I've raised my voice in one of these videos. But can you blame me? Oh dear God, Lord Hater. This guy has to be one of the funniest, most entertaining cartoon villains ever. Voiced by Keith Ferguson, making this the second time he voiced a villain in a Craig McCracken cartoon. Who knows what he did? Freaking monster. Lord Hater is basically a bratty teenager trapped in an evil overlord's body. He's a petty, rude, temperamental, egotistical, self-centered jerk, and I absolutely love him for it. I know I just talked about how much I love Wander, but Lord Hater is really what makes this show. Everything from Keith Ferguson's stellar performance to his myriad of hilarious expressions makes Lord Hater just such a fun character.
No matter. Time for sub mode! Peepers, there is no sub mode!
That said, despite how silly and childish he is, Lord Hater can serve as a genuine threat, and even kind of a badass when the situation calls for it. I can appreciate seeing that in a comical villain, although I'd expect no less from the creator of the Powerpuff Girls. His dynamic with Wander is especially great. Like I said earlier, the two of them have a classic Bugs Bunny and Yosemite Sam dynamic. Hater's obsessed with destroying Wander, but always winds up humiliated and defeated at the end. With the added twist that Wander isn't out to make a fool of Hater. All Wander wants is to be friends with him, and his foiling on Hater's plots is almost always incidental on his part. Their one-sided rivalry also has parallels to Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, in that he could very easily just ignore Wander and conquer the galaxy, but his fixation on destroying Wander always gets in the way of his goals of galactic conquest. He only ever has himself to blame for his failures. What I really love about their relationship, though, is that Wander's not oblivious to the fact that Lord Hater's a bad guy who wants to kill him, like you'd probably expect from that kind of character. Wander just really believes that Hater has good in him and can change for the better. He just wants to help him realize that. And he's not entirely wrong for thinking that, because beneath all the cartoonish villainy, it becomes increasingly clear that, at his core, Lord Hater is just this lonely, insecure dork who wants people to like him, and he compensates by trying to act like this big, bad supervillain. In fact, throughout the show, you actually start to see Hater kind of become a better person. You can mainly see this by the way his relationship with his right-hand man, Commander Peepers, evolves. Voiced by Tom Kenny in one of my personal favorite roles of his, Commander Peepers is essentially the Sylvia to Lord Hater's Wander. He acts as the voice of reason to Hater and desperately tries to keep him focused on becoming the greatest in the galaxy, rather than waste his time chasing Wander. He's one of those characters who's always completely fed up with everyone's crap, and it's always fun to watch him either sass Hater or just absolutely lose it in general. Plus he has the greatest theme song of all time. Peepers. At the start of the show, Lord Hater treated Commander Peepers as nothing more than just a subordinate to him. However, as Wander Over Yonder progressed, the two would gradually act more like genuine friends. Season 2 especially makes it clear that, despite often butting heads, the both of them really do care for and respect each other. Just compare Lord Hater in The Bounty, where he plainly tells Peepers that they aren't pals, to him in The Cool Guy, where he gives up his standing in Emperor Awesome's friend group to stick up for Peepers. While I'm not entirely sure if this was done intentionally, I personally like to think that this gradual change in Hater's character was the result of Wander starting to rub off on him a little bit. There are also a ton of wacky side characters that are fun in their own right, like Lord Hater's inept army of minions, the Watchdogs, and his recurring rival, Emperor Awesome, who's just this weirdly horny, douchebag killer whale man. One of my personal favorites has to be Screwball Jones, this classic Joker-esque supervillain who's essentially an evil version of Wander who wants to force people to be happy. But most importantly, he's voiced by Weird Al Yankovic, and you can't go wrong with that. Visually, the show looks great. The animation is fluid and always well-timed to the fast-paced humor. The characters are expressive and animated, and the color palette is vibrant and pleasing to look at. The setting also has this whimsical Seussian vibe to it that I absolutely adore. While Season 1 of Wander consisted of lighthearted, fun episodic romps, Season 2 would shake things up by introducing a new main villain, Lord Dominator. Dominator's presence would lead the show to go through a tonal shift, with there now being an overarching plot revolving around our heroes and villains trying to stop Dominator from destroying the entire galaxy, whose actions are treated far more seriously than haters. Lord Dominator is such a great addition to the main cast. She's what would happen if you took someone as childish and petty as Lord Hater and made them competent and utterly sadistic. Dominator is one of those villains who knows exactly how evil she is, and just absolutely revels in her own cruelty. While she can be just as silly as the rest of the cast, Dominator is also utterly ruthless, with the show making it very clear that she's not someone you should screw with. Lord Dominator just hits the right balance of serious and silly for me. Also, she gave us I'm the Bad Guy, which still remains a banger of a villain song. Now, I've heard some complaints from fans about this shift in direction, claiming that it made the show much different from what it was. And honestly, I don't see it. While Season 2 of Over Yonder definitely had higher stakes, at its core it was still the same silly, upbeat cartoon it was during its first season, with there being plenty of goofy one-off adventures, alongside the episodes centering around the conflict against Lord Dominator. Despite the more serialized nature of the second season, Over Yonder fortunately never lost sight of what made it such a great show. Insert petty jab at Star vs. the Force of Evil here.
Holy cow, what are you showing me? Hey, come on!
What's interesting to know is that Craig McCracken initially envisioned Over Yonder as having a 22-minute format, with a more emotionally complex overarching story, but was forced by the executives to give it an 11-minute format and keep the first season episodic. So Season 2 is actually more in line with what Craig wanted Wander to be from the start. Honestly, I think Season 2 is an improvement over the first one. I like how the new conflict sees the characters pushed to their absolute limit, as well as how it allowed the show to have more emotional moments. I also love how Season 2 gets more experimental with its plots, like The Breakfast, where the entire episode is in split screen, and we simultaneously follow both Wander and Hater as they go about their morning. Or The Bad Neighbors, which plays out like a sitcom episode, complete with a laugh track and everything. And then there's my personal favorite episode, the cartoon, where the Watchdogs make a cartoon about Lord Hater that parodies He-Man, and perfectly replicates the low-budget jankiness of 80s animated shows, with Hater and Peepers commentating over it MST3K style. It's no exaggeration one of the funniest cartoon episodes I've ever watched, and it has what might be the greatest line in animation history.
Animation is so hard! People who do this for a living deserve more credit and respect!
God, I miss this show. Speaking of which, it's probably about time to discuss Over Yonder's cancellation. A third season was planned, but unfortunately the effing monsters at Disney declined to renew it, claiming they thought it ran for long enough. As a result, the show would end with the episode The End of the Galaxy, and the end credits would tease a new character, Monkey Boy, who had already cameoed in the Season 2 episode The Waste of Time, and would have presumably have been Season 3's main villain. Season 3 would also give us the backstories of the main characters, and the overarching conflict would have seriously tested Wander's philosophy in some way. And man, it just sucks that the show was cut short like this, because it sounds like Season 3 would have taken this show in a very interesting direction. That said, I think The End of the Galaxy made for a fitting series finale, Lord Hater being the one to ultimately save the galaxy, as well as earn the validation that he was desperately looking for, is such a satisfying note to end Over Yonder on. And even though Hater immediately goes back to trying to conquer the galaxy, the show still leaves open the possibility of Hater one day redeeming himself. Again, it sucks that it never got a proper conclusion, but there's no use in dwelling on it. Don't get me wrong, I'd love for Over Yonder to come back, but considering how Craig McCracken no longer has a contract with Disney, the show never really reaching beyond cult classic status, and the greater creative freedom he was allowed under Netflix, You know, before they completely nuked their animation division. Yeah, a revival just ain't happening. Although if you still have a Lord Hater-shaped hole in your heart like I do, I'd like to point you to Craig McCracken's latest project, Kid Cosmic. It's every bit as good as Wander, with the same level of humor and heart, as well as a great art style. It also has elements that were intended for Season 3 of Wander, such as the Earth Sports Enforcement Force, a character who's a direct shout-out to Sylvia, and Papa G is literally just Wander but a hip old person. Seriously, go give it a watch. It's only 24 episodes, you won't regret it. And no, it won't make Wander come back. I have no idea how anyone would come to that conclusion. Like, that's literally not how anything works. Overall, Wander Over Yonder is a fantastic show. It's a fun, upbeat, hilarious cartoon that never fails to give me the warm fuzzies. It's available on Disney Plus, so go check it out if you haven't already. But seriously, Disney, how could you deny us a season 3? You absolute